Saw friends, welcome back to Hobby Vomit. It's me, Matt. Super excited today to be doing another book review. This one, The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. Man, I'm stoked to talk about this one. Let me just start by saying Joe Abercrombie has very quickly become one of my favorite authors. I mean, he doesn't miss for me. He's now, not to spoil my review or anything, but this is the fifth book I've read of Joe Abercrombie, and this is the fifth banger I've read of Joe Abercrombie. He just very suited towards my style. So yeah, super stoked to do a review of this book today. If you've never seen a review on our channel, we take books through our BARF system, in which I go through the four categories of BARF and rank them out of 5 each. So B is believable. How believable are the characters and their setting? A is appeal. What's appealing about the book, or how appealing is the book? R is rhythm, which deals with the plot and pacing. And then F is feeling. How did the book make me feel? At the end of that, I'll give you a score, just the final score, which is the average of those four categories out of 5. And then I'll pitch the book to you to see if it's a book that maybe is for you or not is not for you. Following that, I will go into spoiler territory and just talk about some of the things I liked or disliked about the book, not behind the spoiler shield. So let's get right into it. Like always, I will start by reading you the back of the book. So, The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. They say Black Dow's killed more men than Winter, and clawed his way to the throne of the North up a hill of skulls. The king of the Union, ever a jealous neighbor, is not about to stand smiling by while he claws his way any higher. The orders have been given, and the armies are toiling through the northern mud. Thousands of men are converging on a forgotten ring of stones, on a worthless hill, in an unimportant valley, and they've brought a lot of sharpened metal with them. So yeah, that's The Heroes. It is a book all about a single battle that takes place over 3 days between the Union and the North. And yeah, I will admit I was a little hesitant going in to this book because, not that I don't trust Joe Abercrombie, but in his past books, some of my least favorite parts of his books are action sequences. And just generally, for my taste, action in fantasy books, while it's cool, and I think some people write it better than others, I find my eyes glossing over a little bit because there's typically not a lot of battles don't have the stakes that I want. It's like a single character, your main character going into a battle, a quarter of the way through the book. Nothing's gonna happen to them. Maybe they get a little, roughed up, but they're not gonna die or anything. The stakes aren't that high. You don't know anyone he's fighting against other than just like the opposing army, and it kind of tends to get a little boring. I don't care about all that specific action. So I was a little hesitant because I'd heard this book was just about a single battle, and that's entirely, this book is just about a battle. So it doesn't take us anywhere else. And I'm happy to report that this book rules. Like, it completely changed my mind about action, and I'll talk about that as we go through it. So let's start with our first category, which is believable. How believable are the characters in this setting and just character work in general? So this got a 5 out of 5 for me. I think character work is Joe Abercrombie's strength. He writes, there's a huge cast of characters in this book. I think there's maybe 60 named people. And so we're not following all of them specifically, but even for the POVs, we have probably like 10 to 12 different POVs. And this kind of leads me to what my favorite part about this book is, and why I think the war works for me in this, and the action works for me in this book. So we're following the North, and we're following the Union. So we are following, 6 POVs on each side. So we have, we're invested in both sides of this battle. And not only that, but on each side, we're following a POV in very different ranks of their army. So, like, we're dealing with the leaders of both armies. We're dealing with, like, maybe captains of a warband of that army. And then we're dealing with just, like, soldiers of that army. So we get to see all different ranks on both sides and become invested in characters on both sides. So that makes the stakes a lot higher when these two sides clash And, people we know and have spent time with are fighting each other in a war where the outcome is going to be death. And so the stakes are just inherently raised because you are afraid for these characters. It's not like the thing I talked about where one character goes in that they're going to survive. Now, maybe, five characters are going into this battle, three on one side and two on the other, and you're like, well, someone's not going to make it. At least someone's not going to make it. So how is this going to play out? And it made all those action sequences way more fun and gripping. So character work was awesome. He writes humor, and the other thing is it's so impressive that he's got so many different characters, but all of them feel pretty unique, I think. He's somehow pulled it off that they all have a very unique character voice, and yeah, I love all the characters in this book. So they're all like normal Joe Abercrombie, very likable, yet at the same time hateable. They're kind of shit people, and that's there's people that are just trying to better themselves most of the time, people betraying each other and just shit people, but you kind of love them for it. They're very compelling characters. So yeah, character work or believable, I gave this a 5 out of 5. Yeah, let's move on to the next category, which is appeal. I also gave this a 5 out of 5. So what made this book appealing to me? The large cast of characters, but fleshed out characters, and the different POVs made this really appealing. It was super fun to follow. Being able to see a war from both, kind of a lot of what I talked about in the last thing. Getting both sides of both armies, and then different ranks on each of those, really just made me feel invested in a full-on battle, in which I otherwise, in no other experience have I had that. So that in itself, even if you don't like, I would say if you're not into like if you can't stand to read battle and war because of like the war parts of it or like the death, this isn't going to change your mind. It's a bloody, war filled book. But if you just don't, if you're like me and you find your eyes kind of glossing over when it's just like action, needless action, this I think will actually keep you hooked and compelled the entire time because of that connection to those characters. So that felt pretty unique in this book for me at least. Another thing that was appealing, you're rooting for both sides here. Especially if you've read the previous installments, like the first Law World, you kind of know. It's just an interesting book because technically it's a standalone book to where like you're supposed to be able to just read it by itself, and that's fine. And yeah, I think you could, but one, it spoils stuff from previous books. It very much takes place as the fifth book, but and you're just going to be way more connected with what's going on because really, right? I could just pick any battle in history, read about that battle, and I guess technically enjoy it or whatever, right? I could take that snapshot and do it. But if I know the history of both of those countries and then I read about that war, it's just going to make it better. And that's how this is, like knowing the history of the Union and knowing the history of the North and why they're fighting is going to really heighten this book, I think, or it did for me at least. I don't think it's not a bad book, right? It'd still be a great book even without it, but it just heightened it even more. So, yeah, I was rooting for both sides. You love all the characters and like you don't want anyone to die and you want this war to just be over because it's such a stupid war. But I find that appealing, right? It's also really dark and gritty if you're into really crazy action. I think Joe writes it really well, and I think he's always written it well. But before, maybe I wasn't as invested in those scenes because I didn't fear for the characters or anything. But here, he still has that great writing attached to it. So I think I think that in itself makes it very appealing for my tastes and maybe for you as well. So this was a 5 out of 5 for me. Rhythm, 5 out of 5 for me. I mean, it's excellently paced. The plot, arguably, just like a lot of Joe Abercrombie books, I guess you could say there's not much of a plot. I think there certainly is. It just takes place over the battle, over 3 days. I think the pacing of those 3 days, because you kind of get a before and after and then the 3 days. And those parts, those days break up the battle really well because it's just monotonous fighting over this basically this no man's land in the middle between the North and the Union that they're fighting over, and it's switching sides back and forth day to day, and then you're going back and basically you're like after the fighting's done, everyone's back to their camps. You kind of get to be the fly on the wall and see their planning and their discussing of what went wrong, what went right, what they're going to do going forward, and like those politics of war. And I think that it just the pacing just felt really good. It's like you had those big action sequences, but then you get all the political machinations of both sides, and those honestly, are just as good if not better for me. I love the politicking in Joe Abercrombie books. So, yeah, pacing was excellent. Plot, I liked. It's hard to it's hard to rate this just on plot because there's not too much of a plot, but I still really love the plot of this battle and what this book is trying to say. There's some really cool POV jump. There's one scene in particular that I want to talk about. It's just during a battle. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's just, it's during a battle, and you get all these POV changes. And so the POV changes are you're following a character, and then, actually, you know what? I won't spoil anything. So I'll just say there's a really unique writing chapter that's written in a really cool way of POV jumping. I'll talk about it more in the spoilers. Yeah. So 5 out of 5 for me for rhythm. And then lastly is feeling. 5 out of 5. It's just, so now that we're done, you've seen I've got 4 or 5 out of 5s. I think it's a pretty damn near perfect book, if not a perfect book. I think you could empathize with all the characters in this book and all the different ranks. Like there's fear of war, there's hatred of war, there's the love of war, there's relationships between, generals and commanders, and then also like the wife of a colonel or I can't remember their actual position names, but like just all the relationships between the people. There's the wanting to give up basically the life of war and struggling with that, struggling with familial relationships and the past coming back to haunt them, and just like there's a lot of feeling in this book, I think, but ultimately I think book is trying to say war bad, war bad, and I think I put that it made me frustrated at the pointlessness of war. And I think that's exactly what Joe's trying to do, and I think he nailed it. So 5 out of 5. All right, let me get my score and sell out of the way, then we'll talk some spoilers. So score and sell, I take the average of those 4 categories and score it. 4 or 5 out of 5s, that's a 5 out of 5. Really, this felt like a 6 out of 5 for me, just like Best Served Cold. This, I think, is even better than Best Served Cold, which I just can't believe it, because when you take a book that's like all of like basically fantasy Kill Bill, that's so up my alley. Like I love Kill Bill, and I was like, this is it. And then we're gonna kind of maybe take a dip before the Age of Madness trilogy, but this is, I think, better, it's just wild. Like this was such a good book. So if you just like action in books and you like character work, you're gonna love this book. Like there's a lot of badass action, and it's gritty. But also if you're like me and you're kind of not attached or have felt your eyes glossing over when you're just reading those 20-page action sequence, and at the end it's just like our character emerges from it unscathed, didn't learn anything, it just was an action sequence so that you were entertained. If that bothers you like it bothers me, I think you'll love this book, because this doesn't have any of that. You're super invested in every action sequence, which is really impressive. So, yeah. And then if you love character work and you love like dark, gritty humor, I think you'll love this book. Do I think you should read this if you've not read any other First Law books or any other Joe Abercrombie? I think you could. I think you certainly could. I think your experience will be lessened because of it. But I also get that maybe somebody doesn't want to read all 3 the OG trilogy before they would just want a taste of Joe Abercrombie. If that's you, if you just want a taste to see what Joe Abercrombie is like, I think I'd still recommend Best Served Cold first. There's a lot less characters. There's like 60 characters in this book. And a lot of these characters are their names have weight from previous books that you don't need to know, but when you do feel that weight, it makes it better. So I'd recommend if you're just looking to do one, do Best Served Cold. Then you could probably just jump into the Heroes and ignore the OG trilogy. But honestly, I mean, read them all. I think Joe Abercrombie is excellent. But yeah, I digress. So that's my score, a 5 out of 5. Hopefully I let you know if this book could be for you or not for you. And now I'm going to get into spoilers. I think I just wrote down some favorite moments here. I'm trying out something different to where, I know my videos go super long, and a lot of the time it just devolves into me telling you the plot of the book again, which, as someone that watches a lot of YouTube videos, I never get to see the spoiler sections because a lot of people will just put up spoiler free. So I don't even mind just like reliving those plot points with them, but maybe not everyone wants to see that. So I guess I won't say everything. Let me look through my notes here because I did want to. Oh yeah, real quick. First thing. So spoilers. If you've not read the book, please leave. Don't spoil it for yourself. Go read the book. If you read the book, then welcome to the spoiler section. Here we go. I want to real quick touch on that POV scene because the POV jumping scene. I didn't want to spoil it because nothing really happens that's a spoiler, but knowing the device that Joe Abercrombie uses might ruin it. You might be waiting for it, right? So I really love that scene because you're following, you've read, I think it happens in day one, and you're reading and you're learning, getting used to all these characters and everything, and then a battle starts, and then you're following someone new, and you're like, I don't think I've seen this person before or ever heard their name, and they're just doing a normal battle, and then they get killed. And you're like, oh, okay. And then it jumps to the POV of the person that killed them. And then you're following them, and it's another person. You're like, oh, I don't think I've seen this person either, but they're from the other side. Okay, we're following them now. And then they get killed. And then we jump back to the POV of the other side that killed them. It's another unnamed person. You're like, oh, I see what's happening. He's attaching, and this was, I love this scene so much because, right, this is, in any other fantasy action book, these would just be no-named people. You don't know anything about them. It's just someone getting killed. Here, you get into their heads for a couple paragraphs. It reminds me of Stephen King, where Stephen King can make me understand and know a character in 2 paragraphs, and that's what I felt with this. I knew these characters and their fears and their wants and their desires and what they were thinking, and then they just get killed, and then we jump to the next POV. And that was really fun. And then at the end of that, we jump into a POV of someone we know. I can't remember exactly who it was. I almost want to say it was Gorst. It jumps to Gorst, and you're like, uh-oh. Or maybe it was Weirin of Bly, and you're like, uh-oh. Wait a minute, I know this person, and what we've been doing here, you've taught me that whoever we jump to next is going to die. And I don't think they don't die. But it was a really cool writing device that made me very, very scared for that character in that moment. So I love that scene. That's probably the standout scene for me in the book, even though we're not even following anybody we knew for 90% of it, but loved it. So yeah, I did put that I just wrote down 4 of my favorite moments. I'm probably forgetting some because it's been about a week since I closed the cover, but I just want to talk about a couple things. So POV jumping scene, that was one. Next, Red Beck. Beck getting his name Red Beck was a great moment because Beck, right, we get to follow. He's just this kid that wants to go to war. His father, he's got his father's sword. His father was killed by Logan. And all he wants in life is to leave his mother and his brother in their safety and go to war. And his journey is pretty harrowing. His eyes get open wide to what war really is. And, he's about to die, so he cowers. Not only did he abandons his group as they're getting slaughtered, cowers away. then sees someone come up. He's hiding in a cabinet, hears somebody come up, and he's basically like, I gotta surprise them and kill them, otherwise I'm gonna die. They're gonna find me. So he springs out and kills them, realizes it's his friend, kind of friend, but someone in his party. So he's killed someone on his own side. He's only killed one person. It's on his own side. And then he's basically the lone survivor in that whole like house. They find the other Northmen find him, and basically he's just like shell shocked. Like he can't. He's not even saying anything. But the person that finds him is like, yeah, we found him in all these Union bodies, and like he killed at least 4 men by himself. And so they, in the North, you earn a name, and he's got blood all over him. And so they're like, I know what we'll call you, Redbeck. And everyone's like, Redbeck. And this kid has only killed one person, and it was, an ally. And hilarious, but also, yeah, sad and scary. And then Beck's just journey from there. His interactions with Craw kind of becomes his commander and teaches him to always do the right thing. That's Craw's thing, is like, do the right thing, stick by your chief. And, this is Joe Abercrombie's thing, right? By the end, Beck gives it up. He's like, fuck that. I hate war. I'm going to go home and be with my mom and my brother because, yeah, this sucks. And this was nothing like, there's no glory in war. There's no honor in war. There's just death, right? And so this is the thing that people hate about Joe Abercrombie. They say, well, every character just ends up where they started. There's no growth. And that sounds so much different than what happens in reality, because I think every character has a very significant arc. And sometimes that arc means, yes, they end up back where they were, but they've learned things. They've changed as a person, right? So he just ends up back home. Again, his whole life has changed. He did this big arc. Want to go to war. Want to leave home. Sorry, I'm looking on the camera. Want to leave home. Oh, this is opposite. Whoa. Leaves home, goes to war, is ready, wants to fight, then fights and realizes it sucks ass, goes home. And he's just back at home where he was. But I love Beck's arc. And I actually thought for a second that, just to double down on the Red Beck thing, I thought Weirin, I knew Weirin of Bly was not going to make it. He's just one of those characters, right? He's just boasting about how it's his destiny to not die here. And so nothing screams, I'm going to die here, more than that. And so I thought in the end, he has the sword, the Father of Swords, which is like this crazy sword. It reminds me of a, like Cloud. I've not played a ton of Final Fantasy, so I think it's Cloud. It was like the giant Final Fantasy sword. That's what I pictured as the Father of Swords. And you have to pass that down when you die. You pass it down to somebody. So I thought, oh, Weirin's going to die, and he's going to pass this crazy sword down to Red Beck. And it's just going to double down on Beck earning all of these things that he is not deserving of. But that didn't happen. But I still really liked Beck's journey from the first time we see him to the last time we see him. Really loved Red Beck. Next, I have Weirin's End. So yeah, Weirin of Bly. Great character. I loved this character. He just was wild. And that whole crew, Craw's whole crew, was really fun to follow. But so was everyone in the book, honestly. I loved every character. But Weirin was the ending of Weirin of Bly was so just on the nose for exactly what war is. He gets in this badass fight with Gorst, and yeah, I mean, you just I think it was Gorst. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Bremerdan Gorst that's fighting him. And he's not even wearing armor. He's like, I've seen the future. The destiny's been given to me, and I know I don't die here. I die later on, so I don't care if I'm wearing armor or not, because I'm not going to die. So he's very cocky, and he doesn't even die from Bremer killing him. He just dies because it's a war, and some random spear just guts him from behind. Just the result of fighting around them just gets him, and he's just like, oh, well, I wasn't expecting that. And yeah, it just was so very, again, on the nose for what war is. And just, yeah, I really enjoyed that. And then I've had the POV jumping scene. Loved the POV jumping scene. I've already talked about that a lot. And then lastly, maybe not lastly, maybe I'll talk a little bit more, but Craw's journey. Kerndon Craw. He's the classic, I'm too old for this shit. Like, I gotta retire kind of guy. And that's, from the beginning. He's an old man. He just wants to be done. He wants to be done, and he keeps getting roped back in and roped back in. And then he becomes, Black Dow's second. And he keeps getting roped back in and roped back in. And then finally, when the war's over, he retires. All he's dreamed about all these years is becoming a carpenter again. I think he was starting to be a carpenter way back in the day, but maybe just being a carpenter for the first time. So he goes home, he retires, and at the very end, he gets visited from Hardbread, which is a Northman that was actually working with the Dogman on the other side. And I can't remember exactly why they were leaving, but basically Hardbread was like, hey, we got to go fight. Are you coming? Kerndon Craw's like, no, I've given it up. Like, I'm done. But inside, he's realized that his whole life has been war. He's not good at anything else. He's lonely. He misses the comradeship of his fellow officers, and he's just a lonely old man at this point. He realizes, like, I'd rather die in my element, basically, than here alone. I thought I wanted this. I don't. And at the last moment, he leaves and goes and rejoins the fight. Which, right? Another Joe Abercrombie. Oh, they just ended up where they started. But, like, there's so much depth to Kerndon Craw and his journey that it's more than that. You know what I mean? And so I loved Craw's journey. I loved Craw himself. And yeah, he's a great character. And then some other there's so many characters to talk about. Loved Finrey. Baez was terrifying in this book because, at the end of the day, you get through all of this and you realize, oh, this is just Baez doing exactly it went exactly the way Baez wanted it to. Because of course it did. And, it's one of those things that he was there the whole time. And, like, it felt like maybe he'd jump in here and there to intervene, but not the whole thing. Like, the whole thing was just exactly as he wanted it. And yeah, he just sucks. He's the worst. That was great. That was great. Finrey and her husband, the son of a trader, and the way that she's doing all the work with Baez to help him ascend in the ranks, and it works. So that's great. Finrey. Bremerdan Gorse is iconic, I feel like, at this point. The high voice, the girlishly high voice, and just, I know he's probably realistically not as good of a fighter as Logan, but damn, it seems like he is. He seems way scarier than Logan, and maybe it's just because I've been separated from Logan for a bit, but I love Bremerdan Gorse and his whole, like, struggle with him being, like, not excommunicated, but, like, very, demoted. He's been demoted, and all he wants to do is earn his place back as the king's, like, right-hand man, because he loves Jezal, and that's where he wants to be, and he's felt this great shame for what happened in Best Served Cold. And I love his arc too, right? At the end, he gets the letter from Jezal, and it's just saying, hey, I'm sorry that I demoted you. Why don't you come back? Why don't you come on back? And the irony is that this was written before the war this 3-day war or 3-day battle even started. So all this work Bremerdan Gorse has done, he didn't even need to do it because his friendship with Jezal was enough. And then his love towards Finrey, that whole thing's great as well. Love it. Shivers, terrifying as always. I love that Shivers is back. I love Shivers. Like, I just never thought Shivers was going to become this terrifying man. And, like, even more than that, super terrifying, and then kills Black Dow. That whole scene with Calder, I didn't even talk about Calder. Oh, there's so many characters, guys. There's so many good characters in this book. I love them all. Calder is incredible. He's not a coward. He is a coward, but, like, he's also just a realist. Like, peace. Why don't we just have some peace? Because that's the only way. It just makes sense. We're just killing each other pointlessly. He sees the whole thing for what it is. And at some point he ends up not abandoning his brother, Scale, because Scale is fighting. He's supposed to go help Scale, but his man intercepts that letter saying, well, the Union's got some flankers, so he's going to stay there and stop the flankers, but then Scale ends up dying. Well, we think he ends up dying, which turns out he didn't, and of course Baez has just been keeping him prisoner so that he can use Scale against Calder. Now, the thing that I'm curious about is it seemed very... Right, Baez didn't have to use Scale, it didn't seem like. It seemed like Calder was on board. He was on board to do what Baez wanted no matter what. But then he also was like, you know what? For doing that, I'm going to release your brother. And he's like, oh, Scale? And then Calder lets Scale take his father's necklace, becoming the King of the North. Now, I wonder if that... I can't tell if that's exactly what Baez wanted. I guess I should just assume that is exactly what Baez wanted, because it seems like everything that happens is exactly as Baez wanted. But I did find that interesting that Calder gave the King of the North over to Scale, and how that's going to affect future books, because Scale is very just like, he's just a brute. He's very much just like, fight. Don't care about peace. I just want to kill everybody. So it doesn't seem like a fitting, very similar to Black Dow almost. Doesn't seem like would be fit to lead the North, but if I recall correctly, that like he's the one leading the war that Hardbread gets Craw to go to or something at the end. I can't exactly remember, but yeah, Black Dow, great character. Kind of sad to see him go, but also he's a maniac and he needed to go because he was kind of crazy, but also kind of lonely. He had built this reputation and everyone was afraid of him, and he didn't really have anybody. So kind of a interesting character. Stranger Come Knocking, very weird character. Just like in the beginning a little bit, and then shows up again, but then is also like friendly towards Calder. But we find out that's because of Baez. Just so many characters, so many good characters. I love the presence of Logan, even though he's not actually in this book, but he's such an important character. It's like the ghost of Logan was enough to scare the Northmen away, and I love that. Croy was a good character. Yeah, I mean, I could talk about all the characters. They're all good. I've gushed enough. I think that's all I'm going to say for this book. It's a 6 out of 5 for me. I can't believe how much I liked this book, and I think this is the thing that excites me the most about Joe Abercrombie is that I feel like on a reread, they're just going to get better. Knowing what I know now, it's just going to get better. And so I can't wait to do that one day. And yeah, if you have any opinions on this book, or you agree or disagree with me, let me know, because I want to talk about this with someone, because it's just fun. It's fun to talk about books. So yeah, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much if you made it this far for The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. We will see you next time on Hobby Vomit. Thanks. Goodbye.